Ferrari didn't waste any time. They spotted a clever technical loophole that Mercedes and Red Bull had been quietly using to squeeze extra performance out of their 2026 power units during qualifying sessions, raised serious safety concerns with the FIA, and essentially got the advantage wiped out in record time. One pointed conversation, one request for clarification, and just like that, a qualifying weapon that had been giving certain teams an edge disappeared. But while the paddock and fans are buzzing about this sudden ban, the question that really deserves attention is far more intriguing. Could Ferrari's complaint have unintentionally cleared a smoother road for them and Lewis Hamilton in the fight for the 2026 Drivers' and Constructors' World Championships? Or is Mercedes still holding such a commanding lead in power and overall pace that this change barely registers in the bigger picture? To understand why this matters, we need to dive into the clever engineering at play with the brand new 2026 regulations. The power units are revolutionary, and a huge chunk of the performance comes from the MGU-K asterisk, the motor generator unit that harvests kinetic energy and can deliver a massive 350 kilowatts of electric boost. The rules are strict about how this power is managed at the end of a flying qualifying lap. As the car nears the timing line, teams are required to follow a controlled ramp down, gradually reducing electrical deployment by about 50 kilowatts every second. This isn't arbitrary, it's a safety measure designed to prevent cars from suddenly losing all power in dangerous situations, which could lead to sudden slowdowns on track while others are still pushing flat out. However, the regulations also include a sensible emergency provision. If there's a genuine risk of damaging the MGU-K or the power unit, for example due to a detected fault, teams are allowed to trigger an immediate full shutdown of the electric motor, completely bypassing the gradual ramp-down process. The downside is significant. Once activated, this emergency mode locks out the MGU-K for a full 60 seconds. You lose all that electric assistance for an entire minute afterward, which in the heat of a race would be devastating. You lose positions, momentum, and time hand over fist. But here, where the ingenuity and the loophole came in. In qualifying, that 60-second lockout is essentially meaningless. Once you cross the finish line on your flying lap, you're immediately into a slow cooldown or in-lap. You don't need the extra power anymore, the session is over for that run. So Mercedes and Red Bull realized they could strategically trigger the emergency shutdown right before the timing line. This allowed them to skip the mandatory power reduction entirely and keep running the MGU-K at or near full deployment all the way to the line. The net gain, reports suggest somewhere between 50 and 100 extra kilowatts compared to rivals who were forced to follow the normal ramp down. In the ultra-precise world of Formula One qualifying, where hundredths of a second decide grid positions, that extra shove at the end of the lap could be worth several positions. The tactic had apparently been in use since the early races, including Australia, but it really exploded into public view during the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. Onboard cameras and external footage captured the bizarre sight of Mercedes, Kimi Antonelli and Red Bull's Max Verstappen crawling almost powerlessly through the high-speed Ss after their runs, moving dangerously slowly while other cars were still on hot laps. Williams driver Alex Albon, running a Mercedes-powered car, even ground to a complete halt on track in the middle of the session. Those slow-moving cars created obvious safety risks, and that gave Ferrari exactly the ammunition they needed. Ferrari approached the FIA with a sharp, focused question: how can a rule that was clearly written for genuine technical emergencies be turned into a routine qualifying performance boost? The governing body took the concerns seriously, especially the safety angle of having near-stationary cars on a live circuit. Updated technical directives were quickly circulated to all teams. Starting from the Miami Grand Prix in early May, MGU-K emergency shutdowns will only be permitted in legitimate, verifiable technical emergencies. The FIA has made it crystal clear that they will be scrutinizing telemetry data closely. Any suspicious or repeated use without a genuine issue will be flagged and penalized. The qualifying loophole is effectively dead. Naturally, the online world lit up with reactions. One widely discussed Reddit comment cut straight to the point. For the avoidance of doubt, this has nothing to do with the alleged compression ratio trick that Mercedes and possibly also Red Bull were rumored to be using. This is a completely separate issue and only used during qualifying, exploiting a loophole allowing them to circumvent the prescribed ramp-down rates. Another user replied insightfully, maybe the FIA also wants it to be this year. That last part feels particularly accurate, because while the MGU-K shutdown drama dominated the headlines, it sits alongside a much larger, still ongoing investigation into rumored power unit advantages, including potential compression ratio optimizations, that could be worth up to 0.4 of a second per lap. That battle continues in the background, adding even more tension to the season. All of this is unfolding while meaningful on-track activity continues elsewhere. Right now, McLaren and Mercedes are deep into a Pirelli tire development test at the legendary Nürburgring. Drivers including George Russell, Kimi Antonelli, Lando Norris, and Oscar Piastri have been putting in serious mileage in the current W17 and MCL42 cars, focusing on tire construction variants for future seasons. Separately, Max Verstappen is heading to the same venue this weekend to compete in the Nürburgring 24 Hours qualifier, staying race-sharp while Red Bull works through its own well-documented challenges with the 2026 power unit package. Ferrari chose not to participate in the Nürburgring tire test, but they are far from idle. The team has lined up a significant private test session at Monza in the coming days, where they plan to evaluate a substantial package of new development parts. This includes aerodynamic upgrades, a revised floor, and most notably further iterations of their innovative Macarena rear wing concept, which has already shown promise in delivering straight-line speed but has needed refinement for reliability and balance. At the heart of the story for many fans is Lewis Hamilton's transition to Ferrari. His move to Maranello was billed as the ultimate dream partnership, a fresh chapter that could finally deliver the record-breaking 8th World Championship. Early signs have been encouraging. Lewis has looked composed and competitive in the SF26, particularly shining in China with one of Ferrari's strongest results of the young season. Charles Leclerc has also been delivering consistent points, keeping Ferrari in the constructors' hunt. Yet Ferrari has been refreshingly honest about the challenges. Internally, they acknowledge that their power unit is still operating with a noticeable deficit, reportedly more than 2% down on pure power compared to the benchmark set by Mercedes. That gap translates to a tangible disadvantage in outright pace, especially in qualifying. Banning the MGU-K qualifying trick helps level the playing field slightly in one-lap scenarios, but it doesn't magically erase the underlying engine performance difference. What does provide genuine optimism for Ferrari and Hamilton is the additional development and upgrade opportunities, ADUO, program that the FIA has now formally made available. This mechanism allows eligible manufacturers to carry out targeted in-season development on their power units when performance gaps are identified and verified. Kimi Antonelli, currently leading the Drivers' Championship in the Mercedes, captured the mood perfectly when he noted that Ferrari's chassis already shows strong potential. With the ADU pathway now open, he expects big changes that will allow Ferrari to develop their engine further and close the gap significantly. If they succeed in bridging that power deficit while maintaining their chassis strengths, the second half of the 2026 season could see Lewis Hamilton emerge as a serious, consistent title contender. So has Ferrari's proactive approach to the MGU-K issue accidentally undermined Mercedes' hopes of dominating the 2026 championship? It's too early to say it has ended them outright. Mercedes still looks formidable, with Antonelli and Russell racking up strong results and the team sitting comfortably at the top of the constructors' standings. But Ferrari has successfully removed one tactical edge their rivals were enjoying. Combined with their own aerodynamic upgrades on the horizon, the Monza test data, and the potential for meaningful power unit progress through the ADU route, the competitive landscape is shifting in subtle but important ways. Miami will serve as the first real litmus test under the clarified MGU-K rules. The chess game between the factories is intensifying, and the margins at the front are likely to tighten. For Lewis Hamilton supporters, the ingredients are there: a competitive car base, targeted development freedom, and one of the greatest drivers of all time behind the wheel. Whether it all comes together before the summer break remains the big unknown, but the path forward just got a little more interesting thanks to that one decisive conversation with the FIA. What's your take? Do you believe Ferrari and Lewis can realistically close the remaining gap to Mercedes in the coming months, or will the silver arrows stay out of reach for now? Let me know in the comments. The 2026 season is delivering plenty of drama already.